How you doing, YouTube? This is OBX Hatman out at North Carolina. Gonna go through and show you some features that I put on my boat. Got this time of year coming up now. Spring's starting about a month and a half away from spring. Start doing some good redfish fishing, things of that nature. Croaker and spot, flounder, sea mullet, all kinds of things like that. So what I'm gonna do is do a short video of my boat setup so that y'all can get a better idea of how to maybe you want to place things in your boat, maybe some other ideas that people haven't considered, and we'll go from there. So what I have is I have a Slayer Propel 13. Very good kayak. You can stand in it. Tracks pretty well. I'd say with the pedals at a steady clip I'm getting about probably 3.2 miles an hour. If I'm paddling it, it's a little bit on the heavy side, so it sits down in the water a little bit, gets a lot of drag from the water, but that also reduces how much wind I'm also catching as I'm paddling. Paddles pretty well. Can basically get up to a good two and a half, maybe 3 if I'm really pushing it. But of course I don't use that as much. Only when I'm coming into shore do I need to paddle any at all, because we have a lot of marshes and things of that nature that keep us from keeping the propeller system deployed the entire time. Alright, so we're going to start up to the front, and I'll show you down here. As you can see, this is the HD trolley system made by Yakutak. Runs pretty much the full length of the boat. Does a pretty good job. Deploy the anchor. You're basically gonna run your line through this, and I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but you see how I have these lines tied here, how I have them running through the backside of this clip. Okay, they run through the backside of the clip and then they tie to the underside on the bottom side of this hole. Now the reason you do that as opposed to just tying it off at the top here is because when you go to pull this along to position your anchor at different points, that rope, if it's tied up here, is going to hit these, and it's not going to flow very smoothly through the track system for the trolley. So when you're tying these off, you want to make sure you come through the back and then tie off below at the bottom down here, not up top, and that'll make it glide through these guides a little bit better. I have mine a little bit too tight. I need to loosen it a little bit, obviously, and yeah, so that's the HD trolley system, and it goes pretty much all the way back to that point. It's about 1.5 feet from the end. I could have went a little further back, but I just couldn't reach my arms back far enough from the hull access in the back of this particular kayak. But at least it'll allow me to position my boat in the wind, either against or to my back. So now we'll move along. I have a Scotty paddle keeper, which is right here. I basically put it in line with the pole holder that comes with the kayak. I kind of wish instead of the pole holder was facing straight down like that, I kind of wish they had angled it outward a little bit so I could get the pole a little bit away from me as I'm fishing. But nonetheless, that is what it is. The paddle clip is pretty good. It's pretty solid, holds the paddle in place pretty well. I've got it as high up as I can possibly get it on the kayak. That should keep my paddle out of the water as I'm going along with the pedals. It's 250 centimeters. You got to have a pretty long kayak paddle when you get into boats that are upwards of 30 inches plus in width, which I believe this one's like 32 or something like that. It might be 31 and a half or 32 inches, something like that. So you got to have a pretty long paddle so you can get a good dig beside you as you're going along. Up front here, this is obviously the most expensive part of why you buy a kayak like this is the pedal drive system. does do reverse, obviously, as you've probably seen on a lot of other videos. Works very well. I had an issue at the end of the season last season where it was starting to get a little bit noisy. And when you're fishing in water that's only about 2 or 3 feet deep, noise is not your best friend. So what I ended up finding out was I had to take loose the prop down here. You got to use a spanner to basically take this little ring off after you get the propeller off and everything, and then you have to apply some grease to the gears that's down in here. And once I did that, it basically is real nice and smooth now. There's no winding or anything, even when it's under a hard, duress of use. What I have up front inside of here is a battery bag, and it basically wraps around they got these straps that you can fasten around your scupper holes on the inside to pull the battery bag one direction, and then on the back side I've got some stainless steel screws mounted where the bag is fastened on the opposite side, and I have washers on the other side so that the bag can't pull through the screws. Now what this is up here is this is a Minn Kota 12-volt wiring system, and it's a waterproof wiring system that you can get pretty much Walmart, anywhere like that. Get them online too. They're not too bad, and they have a quick release up front here. I drilled, I think it was 1 1/4 inch hole through this panel, and I made sure that it would clear the drive so I could deploy and pull the drive up without rubbing against this particular plug. And it twists lock in. It's waterproof, and makes it pretty easy to keep from having to put a lot of holes in your boat, just to run your wiring and everything for your 12-volt source out to your fish finders. On this plate, and I want to stress this pretty heavily, on this plate here you see these thumb screws I got these from Lowe's. You got to get the right thread pattern, obviously, but the screws that Native sends with their unit has a little plastic top that basically presses in place to a hex head screw, and after you take them on and off a few times, they will basically ring off, and then you're ending up with something that you've got to use an Allen wrench or hex wrench to take on and off to get the plate. And as much as I have to access the inside of this to take the battery in and out due to my charging system being in my house, doesn't make it very easy. So I picked these up at Lowe's. They're thumb screws. I can get them on and off without much problem, and yeah, it's a good option. So you might want to go that route. Not that expensive either. Then moving along, I'll go over and show you this is the system I use. It's side scan sonar, so a Humminbird 998C HD. It's using a lot of Railblazers equipment as far as how it mounts to the boat. These here are the HD Starport mounts that go in a track system. Work pretty well. I bought an arm to come across here, and it comes down, runs all the way down to the transducer, which is mounted with this Teflon bushing in there that I had to cut to get that to fit correctly. And then it comes up and you see these tie wraps here. I want to explain why I got these tie wraps on here. One is obviously to keep the cord to where it doesn't move around a lot, but the other reason is the way that these pieces fit into each other is they have a little plastic clip that you slide one direction or the other in order to lock one piece into the other. Well, what happens, or what I've seen happen, is that those pieces can come unlocked. They don't fit very tightly. So what I did is I took these tie straps and put around it to basically lock it into the fixed position to where it holds the piece in place. And there's absolutely no way it's going to back off now. So you might want to look into that when you're thinking about doing Railblazer equipment to mount to your boat. That way you can have things in place and you're not worried about stuff falling off in the water and you possibly losing anything. Because this stuff can get pretty costly if you start dropping stuff in the water. Now running back from the transducer line, going to the unit itself. Because of the weight of the 998C, because of that weight of the 998C, I had to use a ram mount. I believe it's a 2-inch ball ram mount, and I used the HD starport mounting screws that come with rail bladed stuff to actually fasten this to the track rail of the boat. And it's pretty wieldy, pretty heavy, but it's definitely not going to go anywhere. And the unit doesn't flop around or nothing because it's pretty heavy when it's hanging off the side of the boat a little ways. And this is the standard bracket that comes with the unit, the 998C. And then we'll move on back from that, and you see the GPS puck, which is also using Railblazer as well. And it's another starport mount, and then it has a little platform that you can get from Railblazer as well that you can mount the puck to. And I had to drill some holes in order to get the puck mounted in the center of that. And then of course I've got everything bundled up in wires here, so I don't have a lot of excess hanging inside the boat for my feet to get tripped on. Now I run the cable up, I run it through the front side, which is just laying in place. I have everything, the cable's entirely wrapped with electrical tape, red electrical tape that comes to this quick release joint. Outside I've got some power running outside, and what I've got to do is put a box. That way I can just, when I get home and I back this in place in a certain spot, I'll just be able to undo this quick joint, and then I'll have another quick joint that will just fasten the alligator clips of the trickle charge tender I've got straight to this wire, and I won't never have to take the battery out ever again once I get that in place. For right now, I still have to take it out. So moving on back, rudder system. I had to do some adjustments on this after using it for a season because the wires do stretch that run back to the rudder. You want to have a little bit of tension on your rudder. That way when you're moving along, it doesn't reposition itself. For the rudder, I've got the boondocks. And then there's also another video that I'll have a link to. And some people have complained about when they're using this, if this center screw backs off any, your whole rudder assembly just falls into the water and you lose it. Well, you need to have enough tension on it so that it does not do that. Which is why these cables eventually end up stretching some. So you have to constantly make adjustments, which are done on these two side screws. It's basically a pinch from a hex screw on the inside that pinches the cable in place. So sometimes you have to take pliers and loosen the screw up, take the pliers, pull on the cable, tighten it a little bit, and check the fit of it. On the underside of this, where the boondocks rudder comes up from, there is a flat spot, I guess is the best way to say it, that this all rides in. And when you're moving the rudder left and right, if you get any sand or grit or anything down in there, you're going to basically start eating into the hull of the boat and get scratches around the area that this twists and operates on. Well, what I did is I got an old plumber's fitting. It's a Teflon ring that they use when they put pipes together underneath your sink. It's like a cheap part to buy at Lowe's or wherever else, Home Depot. And it's big enough that the rudder can still come through that, and then it can set in place on top of the plastic hull. That way you can wear that out as opposed to wearing out your hull from the sand and the grit. And it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. So that's how I fixed that problem, and I'll have another link, like I said, in the description that you can click on and see how I put that in. These are ram tubes that I got for, you know, holding a couple extra poles in the back. And then coming up forward, this is Yak Attack's parking pole. I've got a short one here that I use. I don't need to use it to go through the anchor trolley because I'm going to be using an anchor for that. It's just enough to hold the boat in place. You know, if I pull up on the marsh somewhere, you know, like a little island or something, and I park the boat, it's just simple enough to stick it through here and hold it in place just while I'm eating or whatever. Pretty much that's about it on the boat. I do have a cup holder installed. This is also Railblazer. It's a side mount that they have. with a little extension onto it, and it goes to their cup holder. And then of course I have rail blazer. This is for holding your pole, doing some trolling, various things like that. Works pretty good. You can adjust it all kinds of different angles, and that goes to a HD star port as well. And that's pretty much about it, other than the little bag I got over there. That little bag is from Native. Put my fish grips in it. I put gulp, a lot of gulp bags and stuff to quick access, and jig heads and things of that nature for tying on lures really quickly. And then I've got also some storage underneath with the bag here. And that's pretty much the positioning of everything that I've got. Obviously I don't have it fully loaded up to show you where everything exactly goes in place. I've got paddle leashes and various things like that all over the boat, for wherever I need to tie something down so I don't lose anything. But overall, this is the setup that I have. Been pretty pleased with it. Used it for one season. Can't say enough about it. It's the 13.5 Propel, or 13 Propel. And that's it for this session. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. As always, share or like, and look forward to seeing y'all with some more videos this year around OBX. And this is OBX Hat Man signing off.